Hey guys, welcome back to DCS. So in today's video guys, we'll be looking at the AGM-88C HARM in the DCS F-18C Hornet. Now, because it is in early access and we don't have all of the modes of the AGM-88 available to us in DCS, I decided to make a short presentation about the history of suppression of enemy air defenses as well as the WILD Weasels. Now for those of you who might not be interested in this sort of theory or history, you can go ahead and skip to this time and go straight to the action. Now for the rest of us, let's get started. So this will be a brief history of the suppression of enemy air defense, SEAD or SEAD, depending on how you want to pronounce it. We will look at the AGM-45, the AGM-78, as well as the AGM-88. Let's get started. So these are the following things that we will be covering in this presentation. First, the U-2 incident as well as the Vietnam War, which helped spur the United States to develop an anti-radiation missile. Second, we'll be looking at the WILD Weasels. So these guys are this unit is the initial unit that was designed to be in charge of taking out air defense systems in North Vietnam. We will look at the pre-Shrike era, and then we'll look at the AGM-45 Shrike, AGM-78 Standard, as well as the AGM-88C HARM. So let's get started. So, the U-2 incident, a U-2 reconnaissance plane was shot down over the Soviet Union, which prompted the United States to produce an anti-radiation missile to destroy the Soviet SAM threats. So up until that point, the strategic Air Force or military thinkers did not think of SAMs as a credible threat to aircraft, especially to an aircraft that is flying so high, such as the U-2. So this really set the scene for SAMs, basically. It put SAM missile systems, especially Soviet SAM missile systems, in the spotlight. So something had to be done to basically try to eliminate or deal with this threat. Now the second catalyst was the Vietnam War. Now, initially, during the very early days of the Vietnam War, the U.S. Air Force successfully overcame the relatively weak and primitive anti-aircraft artillery system, air defense systems of North Vietnam, as well as the Viet Cong. But then the Soviets delivered to North Vietnam, their sophisticated, for back then, SA-2 missiles, air defense missile systems. Now, those SA-2s took a heavy toll against U.S. ground attack planes, as well as their B-52 long-range, high-altitude bombers as well. So again, this motivated the United States to develop a missile or a system of fighting these surface-to-air missiles. So they created the WILD Weasels. Now let's talk about the WILD Weasels. So their motto, which they started in Vietnam, was first in, last out. So the image to your right, you can see two F-100Fs. They're the Super Sabres. They're the WILD Weasels in the early days. And to the left, you can see the ferrets from World War II. The WILD Weasels trace their roots, their heritage back to the ferrets of World War II. Now in World War II, there were U.S. Army Air Force groups that were dedicated to finding and jamming radar sites that the Germans had. Now back then, radar was in its early stages. Like, it wasn't something that was heavily used or relied upon. But whatever radar sites that were available by the Germans, these guys, the ferrets, were able to find them, sometimes jam them, or once they found their locations, because back then radar sites were pretty big. They were cumbersome things. They weren't like mobile sites. They could be later destroyed by other bombers. So let's look at the WILD Weasels in their initial stage, before the Shrike missile system was available to them. So they picked the F-100Fs, as I said, and they fitted them with special radar receivers, or radar warning receivers as we know them now. So these were highly sophisticated systems that were fitted to the F-100Fs. There were a two-man ship, a pilot, and a backseater. The backseater was known as the Bear. Now they call them the Electronic Warfare Officer, or EWO. So what these guys did, the F-100Fs, they flew ahead of the strike package. The strike packages mostly contained F-105 Thunder Chiefs, also known as the THUD. Now this kind of mission for the Wild Weasels was very dangerous. So they had to face, and so once they found an SA2 site, once they found the Fang Song radar of the SA2 system, then that area would be protected by a lot of anti-aircraft artillery, or AAA as well. So it isn't just one thing. First of all, they're camouflaged, they're very well hidden, and then they're protected by AAA. So what these guys would do in the very early stages, the Wild Weasels would attack with guns, rockets, iron dome bombs, as well as CBUs, cluster bombs. Now it was noted that the CBUs were the most effective against wiping out this missile site, the whole totality of the site, because the CBUs were able to be basically what they do is cluster bombs is that they spread along a vast area, and it was able to take out the whole site itself with the maintenance as well as the resupply. So as I said, the site isn't something very small. It's a big complex of various different groups. Now one of the problems was the F-100s were slower than the F-105s. So the strike package had to sort of slow down for the F-100 Wild Weasels. And one issue was that these F-100s, the Wild Weasels, were using conventional weapons. So as I said, guns, rockets, iron bombs, and CBUs. So next, move to the AGM-45 Shrike. So once the Wild Weasels, their group develops and they begin attacking or suppressing enemy radar sites with conventional weapons, then the AGM-45 Shrike is developed. So it was developed by Texas Instruments. Later, that part of Texas Instruments was bought out by Raytheon. Initially, the AGM-45 Shrike was developed from the AIM-7 Sparrow 3. Now, in the picture to the right, you can see it resembles the AIM-7 Sparrow. Now, once the Shrikes were available, they were fitted to F-105Fs instead of the F-100Fs. Now, this was mainly due to a lack of space in the F-100s for the accompanying electronics and avionics that were required. The range of the AGM-45 Shrike is 10 miles, roughly. The speed is 1.5 Mach, basically 1.5 times the speed of sound. The warhead was a 150-pound blast fragmentation warhead. Now, what the AGM-45 Shrike lacked was speed, range, as well as firepower. The pilots noted that the speed was quite low, range was very, very short. Its warhead sometimes failed to take out the radar station itself. So all these three things had to be improved. Now the range of 10 miles is actually very, very short. The SA2 missile system was always able to completely outrange the Wild Weasels. So that put the crew, that put the aircraft at risk, at very high risk. Now the guidance for the AGM-45 Shrike was passive homing. Basically, it will only lock onto a transmitting radar station. So when the radar station stopped transmitting, the missile stopped tracking, and it basically went into the ground. And also, one complaint that the Wild Weasel crews had was that there was a high workload for the electronic warfare officer in the back. So there was a lot of tactics and a lot of work needed to be done for the AGM-45 Shrike to be effective, basically. So let's move on to the AGM-78 Standard, which came straight after the AGM-45 Shrike. Now, the AGM-78 Standard ARM stands for Anti-Radiation Missile. It was developed by General Dynamics. As you can see, the speed is higher. It's Mach 1.8. Now, one very important thing is the range. The range for this missile is 56 miles. 56 to 60 miles. Now, that is a lot better than the Shrike. Its warhead is also bigger. It's 200 pounds. However, its guidance system is still similar with passive homing. And also, what the AGM-78 did was that it reduced the workload for the electronic warfare officer, and it was a lot more automated. So basically all you had to do was lock on and fire. Next, we move on to the AGM-88C HARM that we have right now in DCS. So this is developed by Raytheon. Its speed is Mach 2. Its range is 80 nautical miles or 150 kilometers. Now nautical miles is different from actual miles. In actual miles it's about 96 miles. So as you can see, this is a way above and beyond improvement over the AGM-45 as well as the AGM-78. Now its warhead is 150 pounds, which is relatively similar to the other missiles. Its guidance system, however, is much more sophisticated. It has passive homing as well as active homing, and the later models of the AGM-88 have INS as well as GPS. Now, one thing that is really important about the AGM-88 HARM is that it will retain the location of the radar. Even if the radar station turns off its radar and stops transmitting, the AGM-88 HARM will still remember where it was. Now, initially it was developed for the Navy and was later adopted by the Air Force as well. Now, one thing that is really important and what is very beneficial about the AGM-88 HARM is that it has minimal workload for the pilot. You only need one pilot. The workload is very minimal, and we will see later on when we get into the plane in DCS, and I'll show you guys. And also HARM stands for High Speed Anti-Radiation Missile. Well guys, that's the end of the presentation. I hope you guys enjoyed this little sort of historical, theoretical look at the intricacies of SEAD and the WILD Weasels and anti-radiation missiles. Thank you so much for watching, and now let's get to the action within DCS world in the F-18C Hornet. Hey guys, welcome back to the DCS F-18C Hornet. So here we are in the cockpit. I hope you guys enjoyed that presentation, for those of you who might have watched. So let's get started on how to use the AGM-88C HARM. So first things first, master arm to arm, master mode to air to ground. We'll select the HARMs, and down here on the left side you can see that we have 3 different modes. If I zoom in, self-protect mode, TOO, targets of opportunity, as well as PB, which is pre-briefed mode. Unfortunately, at the moment, because this is in early access, we only have access to the self-protect mode, which is the most basic mode out there. Now, I don't know much about the AGM-88 and how it's used in the F-18C Hornet, but I'm going to guess the self-protect mode is, as the name suggests, self-protect. It is something very basic, something that you would do immediately to protect yourself, basically. It isn't something... This is just my impressions. It isn't a mode where you would use to attacks basically, it isn't a mode where you would go after air defense targets with. This is just something to protect yourself or protect your flight. Anyways, so because it is the most basic mode, it will not give us any ranging information. Basically, it won't tell you how far away the target is. So in order to overcome this until we get the other 2 modes, you can go ahead and select a waypoint. Basically make a waypoint where the target will be, where the radar site will be, and then select that waypoint. So at the moment I've selected waypoint 1, and we can see that it's almost 70 nautical miles away from us. Then the next thing you have to do, you have to come down here to this panel here and turn this on, this ALR67 power button. You turn this on, and then your RWR turns on. Basically, this is the analog display, and you can come down here to the right DDI, and you can select the EW. Now, if you select this, the image from this RWR analog display will be displayed on the right DDI here. Next, you want to click HUD to display whatever threats that are out there onto your HUD here, which will be much easier to use. Now, if you have multiple emitters, multiple radar sites that are emitting, that are lighting you up, and you want to see clearly which one you want to target, you want to go ahead and press this offset button here, and I'll show you guys once we start getting painted by those targets. You want to press this offset button. It will make it nice and easy for you guys to see the different targets out there. And if you click the display, the limit right here, it would only limit what you can see on the RWR to the 6 most credible threats out there. So, with all that said and done, let's go ahead and take the aircraft out of autopilot and let's head straight for the radar sites. So here we are at 37,000 feet. We're quite high up and we're at Mach 1.21, so we're quite fast. So I've basically placed an SA-6 as well as an SA-2 out there. The SA-2 is what the Wild Weasel units of the Vietnam War went against. So we'll go ahead and fight against an SA-2 Fang Song radar as well as an SA-6. So pretty soon they will be able to detect us, and once they detect us, they will show up on our RWR. Any minute now. Just making sure that everything is on. Yes, it's on. Now you can see the station selected for the HARM. It's station 8. And there we go. We got our first ping by the FS. Now this is the Fang Song, the SA-2 radar station. Now shortly we're going to get an SA-6 as well. Now when it has this box around it, that means that the AGM-88 HARM, if I were to fire one, it would go against the Fang Song first. Now pretty soon we're going to get painted by the SA-6. And we're going to be able to select that as well. Actually, let's go ahead and fire one missile at the Fang Song at 40 miles. So that SA-2 has just detected us. There's a bit of asymmetrical load on the aircraft now. Ah, there we go. There's the SA-6 now as well. So let me go ahead and put this into autopilot. Okay. Now, to choose between the different targets that you have, you need to press this button right here. So you need to map this button, this RAID/FLIR FOV select button, to something on your HOTAS or either on your keyboard. This button allows you to select to jump between the various different radar sites that you want to attack with the HARM. You need to map this to something. It's very important. And it's quite difficult to find as well within the control options. So now we have 2 radar sites, and we're going to go ahead and press this offset button. And hopefully this will clear it up for us. Now the radar sites are quite close to each other. So now I'm targeting the SA-6. And we'll fire one on the SA-6. And now they've fired a missile at us. So we're going to go ahead and turn around. So we're pretty high up and we're pretty fast. So that missile is not going to reach us. You can't even see it. But you can see from the RWR, it is the SA-2 that has shot the missile. And it is directly at 6 o'clock. The SA-2 has shot another missile. And there we go. Basically lost lock. So we'll turn around. I think the SA-2 got hit. Now I'm gonna go ahead and edit this out in the final video, and you guys would have already seen if the missiles have impacted or not. I think the missiles impacted, guys. Yeah. There we go. No more SA-6 or SA-2. So the missiles worked. The AGM-88C HARM did its job, basically. Do we see anything burning out there? Yes, I can. Yes, I can see something burning out there. And one over there. That's pretty cool. Well, guys, that's about it, really, for the AGM-88C HARM at the moment in the early access. Until we get the TOO or the PB modes, that's about it. That's all you need to do to fire them. And it's very straightforward and very effective. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.